The religion of Yaa-Nun with all its symbols and gods/goddesses, as with all other African religions, are creations of the past 6,000 years. They did not exist before then. They all came about as a consequence of the teachings of Yaaquub. Notice how many topics relate directly or indirectly to Yaaquub. The reason is because this is really Yaaquub's world, and just about everything in it results directly or indirectly from some part of his teachings. Briefly speaking, Yaaquub, after he made the light races, was compelled to teach them how to live. Civilization is always taught. It can never evolve naturally, as modern sociologists and the like would have us believe. It is not in the same realm of natural events as eating, sleeping, and procreating. In fact, without civilization, human beings naturally decline. Yaaquub was a great scientist knowledgeable in the entire circle of wisdom. Knowledge is called a circle because it starts at the starting point and goes around until it ends at the same point, but higher and larger. If you will, imagine a coil or a snake coiled on itself with its head resting on its tail. The head and tail are at the same point on the circle, but the head is at a higher elevation. So it is too that the universe will end at the same point it began, which is divine unity, but at a higher level of wisdom due to the experience gained. That in brief is the true definition of wisdom, and in our language it's called a serpent due to the metaphor we just mentioned. Yaaquub took the circle or serpent of wisdom and condensed it into 6 major parts of knowledge. He left out the 7th part, divine unity, because it cannot be taught, but only experienced. He further divided each of the 6 parts into 60 parts, each one corresponding to 1 year of an individual's life. In his original plan of making the light races, their normal lifespan was to be 60 years, and in fact this is the average worldwide. So the 60 parts of knowledge correspond to, or sum up, what each year of an individual's life brings or is supposed to bring in terms of experience. Life is supposed to be lived such that when a person reaches a certain age, he or she has gained an experience, the equivalent of that amount of knowledge corresponding to that section of the 60 parts. For example, when a boy or girl reaches puberty, he or she is supposed to have learned all that can be taught about sex and its 2 purposes. But this is no longer the case today. The same holds true for almost every avenue of civilized life, including such basic things as how to cook properly, or clean house, or grow fruits and vegetables. How many youths can do these things today, or if not actually do them, know them theoretically? So, the circle of knowledge was reduced by Yaaquub into 360 parts, 6 by 60. The 360 parts or degrees of knowledge was not taught to the light races, but only to black people. All this applies to the past 6,000-year period. Before then, the division of knowledge was as follows. Ancient knowledge was divided into 7 major parts, then the 7 were each divided into 7,000 parts, each one corresponding to 1 year of the 7,000-year lifespan. That made a total of 49,000 subjects of learning. Therefore, there were a total of 49,000 rituals. The vast majority of them are called minor rituals, and were performed differently in every town. Second are the major rituals, fewer in number and performed differently in every clan according to the chief's teaching. The third type are 7 in number and were performed exactly the same in every tribe. They are called the 7 great rituals or festivals of the black nation. Hence the ancient circle had 49,000 divisions as opposed to the modern 360 degrees. Yaaquub took 33 degrees of knowledge out of the 360 and established mystery or initiation temples to teach them to the leaders of the light races. In addition, he took 3 more degrees and added them to the 33 for a total of 36 and taught these 2 highly qualified individuals who passed the standards of selection he set up. These 36 degrees of knowledge became the science of all the highest secret societies of the light races. They had their foundation in the temple schools of ancient Egypt. Selected individuals of the light races were recruited from around the world to the mystery schools and taught. They then went back and started secret societies, a few of which still exist to this day. In Egypt, the 36 truths of Yaaquub became known as the 36 netters. The word netter means truth, and has been misinterpreted by Egyptologists to mean gods. The original 360 degrees of knowledge formulated by Yaaquub were taught an even deeper secret among the high priests of that time, all of whom were black. This knowledge was withheld from the netter mystery schools. The high priests migrated down into Africa when it became obvious that the decline of Egypt was inevitable. They took with them the original 360 degrees of knowledge and settled among 10 African tribes located across the entire African continent. These became the foundation of the 10 African schools of ritual initiation, as well as 2 others located outside Africa, which are practiced the same way to this day. At the same time, the knowledge of the 36 netters filtered down into the various African tribes when the priests began migrating out of Egypt into West, East, Central, and Southern Africa. It was from the science of these 36 netters that all the tribal religious systems of Africa originated. So in Africa today there are two types of schools of initiation, those of the original 360 degrees and those of the 36 degrees or netters. Add to that the 33-degree mystery schools that exist all over the world, especially among the light races, and that will give you an idea of the origin of the mystery or secret religions of the world. Now, each secret religion is different. Hence there is Yaa-Nun, or the religion of the goddess Mummy Wata, Mummy Water, or the mermaid goddess. It arose primarily out of reverence for water as sustenance of all life. So too did every religion have its primary god or goddess, as well as many lesser deities and all their symbols. Now, here is the important thing. This present cycle is the cycle of decay. We can also use the word deterioration or corruption or any other word with a similar meaning. Everything decays in this age, especially knowledge. God has increased or waxed in wisdom since eternity, and has never known what it is to decrease or wane in wisdom. One of the purposes of this cycle is to gain this experience. It befell Yaaquub by preordination as the one to prepare the necessary conditions for evil, decay, ignorance, self-forgetfulness, to manifest. He went about it basically by first deteriorating the human body to a 60-year lifespan, and reducing the serpent of knowledge to 360 degrees, then further to 36 degrees and finally to 33 degrees. The 360 degrees are practiced by 12 modern black tribes today. The 49,000 degrees are held in abeyance in the custody of the 24 elders until the end of the age. The 33 degrees are practiced by Freemasons, especially the secret group called Rosicrucians on one side, and their opponents called Theosophists on the other side. The 3 plus 33 or 36 degrees are practiced by so-called masters of the light races, as well as others we will mention later. They are also practiced by the adherents of indigenous Africa and other religions such as Yaa-Nun. White people call this knowledge witchcraft or black magic in the hands of blacks, and white magic when practiced by them. The connotation is totally false, even though literally speaking the black and white terms are racially appropriate. When one considers the intent of the magic, then black magic is the true form of magic, whereas white magic is false. Both systems may use basically the same scientific principles, but the purposes to which each one is put determines whether it is true or false magic. Both systems rely on the 3 highest degrees of knowledge out of the 36 to formulate their highest principles. This one degree of knowledge is called psychic science. It's a science of the imagination. This is a natural science, as are all true sciences, that relies on the natural God-given power of the mind to be creative. The mind is naturally and spontaneously creative, and one can see this in dreams, where whole worlds are created out of nothing. Although dreams are unreal, given that they are imaginary, the same applies to daydreams and fantasies, nonetheless their effects on the human soul is absolutely real. A person may wake up from the most awful nightmare and be relieved that it was just a dream, but the fear he experienced was real. If he had come from somewhere where he had never experienced fear before, his dream experience of it will teach it to him as effectively as experiencing it in real life. It may not last long, but it is real at the moment he experiences it. This is one manifestation of the natural psychic power of all people. Now, the art or science of controlling this power comes in the phenomenon called lucid dreaming. This power, although powerful enough on an individual basis, can be increased dramatically by involving other people in it. This too is natural, following the law of rhythms. Human minds, with their seat in the brain, oscillate within a particular spectrum of frequencies. It's possible to entrap this oscillation using the law of rhythms, according to which oscillations of the same frequency enhance one another and unite into a larger whole. When a person with a strong mind starts a certain type of imagination, and finds other people who are sympathetic to it, the rhythm of his mind will entrap those willing participants such that all of them engage in the same rhythm and thus imagine the same reality. That is exactly how children were taught in ancient days. The word entrapment is totally inappropriate in the ancient context. A more proper word would perhaps be resonance, where a teacher gets the children's minds and hearts to resonate at the same rhythm as his. But entrapment is quite appropriate in the modern context because the intentions and use of this science have become perverted in many, but not all cases. The truth of a science is determined by the intent of the user, so the same scientific principles can be used for both good and bad. By this entrapment, it's possible to make willing people to believe in a reality that does not exist, that is totally imaginary. As the knowledge of the 36 netters deteriorated, so too were the proper uses of psychic science forgotten. In the passage of many millennia, the uses went from one end to the extreme until a whole slew of ancestral religions were formulated. Many psychically gifted people down the ages came and contributed to them and started new ones, or changed and modified the old ones. Hence as time went by, there arose entire worlds of ancestral spirits that are totally imaginary. The spirits possess those willing to participate, causing them to prophesy, divinate, cure illnesses, cast spells, and many other related activities that you are no doubt aware of. They gave rise to fetishes, symbols, gods and goddesses, and new forms of rituals and sacrifices for enhancing the psychic power. What arose out of the corruption of psychic science is so convoluted and old in terms of centuries, that to try and outline it all would take many pages. Suffice it to say that in every system that comes out of the original, there always remains a kernel of truth at its center. It is this kernel that is important for the reminding of black people about our ancient history. Those people who are involved in ancestral religions like Vada and are already at a decided advantage, and can comprehend the larger truths much more easily. However, there is always the danger of getting lost in the maze of the psychic worlds if one believes in them and takes them to be real. The truth is that they only affect those who are willing participants because their power, even the power of their symbols, actually emanate out of the mind of the participant, and from nowhere else. Others with stronger minds get it started with suggestions, but the participant has to pick it up from there and take it all the way for it to be effective. Without willing participation, it has no power. Superlearning or memory retention depends directly on habituation, i.e. making it a habit to remember. The human mind is organized in such a way that it can be trained by repetition. Forgetfulness is nothing more than the habit of forgetting. Similarly, recall is no more than getting the mind into a habit of remembering, and this takes practice. Obviously, the best time to start training the mind is when one is a child, when the conscious mind is very pliable, but one can do it as an adult also. The key to success is to be aware that superlearning or recalling is like making a path through a field by constantly walking it. Once this idea becomes clear in the mind, then the training plan will succeed. There are many systems formulated by many authors to do this, some more successful than others. The differences in success is caused by whether or not the learner is aware of the mechanics of conscious recall, which, as I said, is to walk a path through the nerve circuits that make up the forest of the human brain. Most of the books, if not all, use the same technique of learning by repetition. There's a better method, though, that doesn't depend on books, using the details of your own dreams or daily activities. These two methods are the best and quickest because they are personal and therefore geared to each individual's uniqueness. What you do is keep a pencil and paper next to your bed, and write down your dreams every morning in as much detail as possible. Another alternative is to keep a daily journal, and write down your daily activities every evening in as much detail as you can. The longer you do this, the more details you'll remember. Recollection is directly related to learning. The easier you can recall details, the easier you can learn new ones. Thus, superlearning and super recall are two sides of the same coin. In tribal societies where there is no writing, children are trained by adults by being asked to recount their dreams of the night before in detail, and then relate their day's adventures when everyone is sitting around the home fire at night. This is done in an atmosphere of fun, making it enjoyable to the children. And so their memories become well trained, making it easy for them to remember and understand stories used to teach them. When the children are in attendance, they don't sit in classrooms as modern children do. The lessons take place mostly outside in a natural setting. In every ritual, they are taught about the character development of a person. They are taught that each aspect of character is directly reflected in a specific part of the human body, and how each one created its plant and animal. The format of the lessons is somewhat like this. First of all, children are never discouraged from indulging in their imaginary worlds. Everyone knows that young children have imaginary friends in imaginary worlds that are as real to them as you and me sitting here. They are encouraged to indulge in these worlds of the imagination to the utmost degree possible for their minds. As they grow older and eventually become adults, they retain this power of vivid imagination, having brought it under complete mental control under the guidance of their teachers. As a result, all adults have this power, but more so the teachers of rituals. They use this natural gift. To us it's a natural gift, whereas to modern people it's a curse from which they must disabuse their children. The teachers take advantage of this gift and use it to impart their lessons. They encourage all the children to create a common imaginary world. The teachers then magnify it with their own minds until it is clearly visible to every child. To all those modern people who have forgotten the imaginary worlds of their childhood, it's somewhat like a lucid dream, but wide awake. Once all the children have entered this imaginary world, the teachers put in about 7 of the original plants and animals, using their own imagination. They recreate them into this world the same way you intentionally create objects in your lucid dreams. The first 7 or so plants and animals they put in it correspond to those aspects of character that are the first to develop in a child, which are happiness, friendliness, activeness and so on, corresponding to the appropriate body parts like the heart, the eyes, the feet and so on. Then the teachers create a situation in the imaginary worlds that leads, for example, the sadness in the children. They feel this sadness and immediately become sick in the corresponding part of the body, and they also notice the same effect on one of the animals and plants. The animal becomes sick and the plant begins to decay. They are then encouraged to remove the sadness and replace it with a happy situation. For example, if the sadness was caused by the older children taking the younger children's toys, they give them back, thus restoring their happiness. Because it all happens in the imagination, the animal and plant are immediately healed, and the sickness disappears from the children's bodies. By the use of simple exercises such as these, they are taught about the anatomy of the human body, and which body part corresponds to which aspect of their character, and which plant and animal were created from it. Because of the wisdom of the teachers, the imaginary situations come in endless variety, stimulating their young minds. After 7 years they graduate in a ceremony that celebrates the first 7,000 aspects of character in their prototypes. They spend 40 days of the graduation period in a place whose name has come to the present from the past as the Garden of Eden. This was one of 12 such places on earth, one in each tribe's country. Every country's garden of prototypes is in 10 sections. The first section has 7,000 prototypes of both plants and animals, corresponding to elementary education, or the first 7 years from age 7 to 14. Every following section is larger than the one before, with more prototypes. The next 9 sections have prototypes corresponding to the rest of the person's ritual education every 7 years until the age of 77. At this age, the person's character reaches full maturity and perfection. At the elementary graduation festival, the children see the perfect plants and animals for the first time, in their natural habitat. After the 40-day period, the ceremony concludes with the preparation of food from the trees of life that grow in that section. The festival is held at the clan capital. It's a huge celebration with children from 1,000 towns all coming together at the capital for a week. There is music and dancing, and the whole clan is invited. For at least one day of that week, most citizens will make sure not to miss the opportunity to attend and enjoy the feast. Everyone is educated until the age of 77. At that age they have a final graduation. All the graduates of the clan come together. They gather at the chief's temple at the capital, and all 72 clans. 2,000 judges welcome them there and guide them in the final ritual, called the ritual for the creation of life. The graduating group and the judges together make 144,000 people. They are led by the 2,000 judges and the 2 chiefs into a state of consciousness called divine unity. We will talk at great length about this state of mind because it is the culmination of every major ritual of the Black nation. It is fostered methodically from childhood, where it begins as shared childhood dreams during children's classes. It is then developed in 10 stages until its culmination at 77 years of age. For now, suffice it to say that it is a state where all the people become one in mind. Their hearts and minds become single as if it were the heart and mind of one person, yet each one remaining as a distinct individual. As soon as this divine unity is attained by all, they proceed to raise from their hearts, which beat as one heart, every aspect of their character one at a time in the order they were taught beginning at childhood. When the first aspect has risen to fullness in the heart and mind of every man and woman, it takes form right before their mind's eye. As soon as they release it from their minds, 2 versions of it, a male and a female, flash into physical existence in the appropriate section of the garden of prototypes. Then they go on to the next one. They continue this way non-stop for 40 days and 40 nights, without eating, drinking, or sleeping. They completely lose sense of time and space, and all physical cravings like hunger and thirst. The state of divine unity is such that it balances the body's physical energies for as long as a person is enraptured in it. They continue this way until they create all 144,000 prototypes, both plants and animals. At the end of the 40-day period, they reach a climax of fully mature, perfect character, magnified many times by being united as one. They have then perfected every aspect of their character and are considered from then on to be fully mature adults. They go on to take their places of responsibility in society. That is the perspective from which we consider what modern scientists call biology. We look at it from above, as creators, whereas modern scientists look at it from below, as creatures. The ancient system of education by initiation is no longer taught in its complete form. It hasn't been taught like that now for 6,000 years. The reason is that the entire initiation system of character development took 70 years to complete in 10 stages. Each stage lasted 7 years, starting from 7 to 14 and so on, and 70 to 77 years old being the final stage. It's impossible to teach it today in its complete form because we are much shorter lived than our ancient ancestors. So the system is taught in a shortened form suitable for our time. But it's no longer taught openly. It has been taught in secrecy ever since the appearance of the light-skinned races 6,000 years ago. It's taught only by the elders of a few African tribes, including the tribe of Botswana in the southern region of Africa. Unfortunately, initiation is not taught in America. Even in Africa, it's still the deepest secret. This will remain so until the end of this cycle called the cycle of white people, which is nearing its end. When it ends, then the ancient teaching system will come back into the open. This brings us to the question of how to teach children some of the ancient knowledge. All the important knowledge in ancient times was taught in the form of rituals. We have a ritual for every important aspect of life, just as moderners today have a textbook for every important subject. But the difference between ancient and modern learning is exactly the difference between intellectual or book learning and real life experience. This is why it's difficult under the modern system to teach true science and mathematics. They are intricately related to life, whereas the architects of modern education divorce them from everyday real life. They created a school system that incarcerates children all day inside a fenced-up prison, completely removed from society, and expect them to learn how to live in that very society. The result is nothing more than superficial intellectual knowledge. Ultimately, everyone has to start from scratch after leaving school and try to educate themselves about real life, sometimes gaining some contribution from their schooling, sometimes not. To educate black children properly, we must separate them from other children. There is no way, we repeat, and you can disagree with me as much as you want, there is no way to teach our children properly as long as they are mixed in with the other races. There are many reasons why that is so, but we'll mention just one. We black people made the other races in our image 6,000 years ago. All the troubles on earth started as a result of this. Now, if you truly believe this, how will you teach it to our children in a multi-ethnic setting? How will the other parents let you teach it in their school? You may say, well, I just want to teach them the principles of ancient science and mathematics. But these principles are based on the fact that God is the black person, and all other people were made in his/her image. They involve rituals whose foundation is that we do not study science and mathematics, but manifest it on earth. Made human beings can only study what has been made or created. Creators, on the other hand, can only manifest the principles of creation, because these principles originate from within them. These two modes of learning are worlds apart, and 180 degrees opposite each other. Now, having said all that, I'm sure that you can proceed with your good intentions, and they are good and worthwhile. Every way we can help our people, especially children, is more than worth the time, by mentioning some of the truths to them, namely that the ancients had ways of perfecting people's characters, and they also had ways of finding soulmates for everyone, as well as methods of health and hygiene that totally prevented all forms of illnesses, and many other truths we'll discuss in the future. And it's also important to tell them that these sciences and customs will come back into use very soon. As to teaching them the sciences in detail, it's not possible to do it except by the method of rituals and initiations. Black people did not choose this method of learning arbitrarily. They chose it because it's natural and superior to any other method imaginable, now or any other time. At the end of the universe, the 1 billion, 8 million, original gods absorb all life into themselves by uniting their minds and life with the minds and life of all living things. That is to say, they absorb the beingness of all things, even inanimate objects, by joining it with their own being. They become all that is, which is a state of mind called divine unity, or the oneness of God. They then come into the present universe while in this state, and live on the first earth. They bring all life from the past universe as a part of their very being. As soon as they descend on the first earth, they create perfect plant and animal life from the integrity of their perfect character. These perfect plants and animals are called prototypes, or the original totems of life. They are the first plant and animal life forms of the universe. All subsequent prototype life forms will be modeled after them, and be identical to them in every way. The reason for this is because all totems that are subsequently created are created after the creators have perfected their own character, such that it is as perfect as the character of the original people. The totems then issue forth spontaneously from the overflowing beauty of the perfection of their integrity, meaning their perfect character. They issue forth from their vivid imagination and condense instantly into physical life. That is how all plant and animal life begins in every universe. The life of the black man and woman, on the other hand, has no beginning. It is self-generated and self-created at the beginning of creation that has no beginning. Therefore the human bodies, the bodies of the black man and woman, have always existed. They are the primary form of life, without beginning or end, without source or sink. These two bodies are the source of all life in the universe, as well as the sink of all life, in that at the end of the universe they take all life back into themselves. Together they are the unification of every form of life that has ever existed in the past, all the way back to eternity, and also life that exists now as well as life that will ever exist in the endless future. All the past, present, and future life forms are contained and unified in the body of the black person, the man with male life and the woman having all forms of female life, but only when the two are united as one in mind and heart. The original totems or prototypes are the source of all other types of life forms. The later forms evolve from these by means of a law of evolution called the law of integrity. According to modern scientists, all life forms evolve from lower life forms by a law of evolution called survival of the fittest. That is false. The true law of evolution is called the law of integrity of character.